Welcome to the NASM CPT podcast and our Facebook Live webcast. My name is Richey, and today I have the honor, privilege, and absolute delight to have one of my friends that I've known for many years. I think probably I met him a year or two after starting with NASM, but he had been with NASM far longer than me. I think. So I'm not sure. There was a hiccup. He was working there, and then maybe he wasn't because I never saw him. And then all of a sudden, he was getting all these workshops that I wanted to teach. But I want to give a shout out to my friend now. I didn't like him at first, but my friend now, Ken Miller. Ken, thanks for being on with us, man.
Oh man, the honor and pleasure is mine, man. I was actually wondering. Okay, it's like, did I do something wrong to Rick because all these cool interviews and I haven't. My phone hasn't rang yet, but no, the honor, pleasure, and distinction is all mine. Spend this time with you here today, Rick.
Oh, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. This is not our first podcast together either. We were holed up in a room in Shanghai. Is that right?
We were in Shanghai. It was Shanghai.
It was a different podcast, one that I had with a business partner and another NASM Master Instructor named Aaron Drogozeski. And he was not with us, but we went in and we did the podcast. And I really enjoyed having you on. And Mike Fantagrassi was there, Prentice Rhodes. Nate was on with us as well. And I've got Nate scheduled to come on the show in a few weeks. But nice. We sat around, we were batting around ideas. We just talk fitness. And really one of the cool things about doing a podcast is, in so many ways, we spend time, okay, can we identify research? Can we talk about the issues? Can we do that? But sometimes it's fun just to sit with a group of people and rap about the industry and about what we do and who we are and what we expect and what we see. And that's what we do in conversation. We sit down, we chat with each other. And so that's what I want to have today, but with a little more direction because there are some things I'm interested in that I know you know about. And I'm going to tap you on the shoulder for all of those things. The first thing I want to talk about, and I think that some people might be pretty interested, is the NASM Master Trainer course. And I think people have probably been hit with some emails and say, what is this Master Trainer course? What is it? What do I get from it? What can it do for me? And then I want to get into talking about recovery and regeneration. And we did speak to that with Dr. Braga last week when we talked about sleep specifically. And I thought that was great, but we can get into a lot more different content with you. So with all that being said, before we go any further, tell us a little bit about who you are, your education, your background, professionally, all that stuff. And then let's jump into that NASM Master Trainer course.
Okay, well, you know how much I love talking about myself, so that'll be about 20 seconds. Well, like you, I went through the California University of Pennsylvania for my master's degree in, I believe it's injury prevention and performance enhancement. It's been since 2005 is when I went through that program initially for the master's, and I was the second cohort to come through. But I bring that up because it opened the doors for me to do a lot of other things. So with the majority of my career being in personal training, I was personal training in 1994 after I finished my bachelor's in exercise science. So did corporate wellness for a while, went on to work with then Family Fitness, but they merged to become 24-Hour Fitness back in the day. So I was a part of that early evolution of that company. So that was a great experience, being 24 years old and being a fitness manager and, having 5-10 trainers working under you. And you're like, I just know how to train. I never learned how to manage.
Right.
I got at that young age. But that propelled me to do other things. And then, as far as working with different health clubs in the West Coast primarily, but got my master's in 2005. And that opened the door for me to become a strength conditioning coach. So when we talk about reconditioning, return to play, recovery, I gained a lot of experience just because of working with football, gymnastics, golf, softball, that were my respective sports. And then I assisted with lacrosse, soccer, and I was actually an assistant for the football team as well, for as far as strength conditioning goes. But the exposure to work with athletes from the performance side, but also to be able to apply what I've learned through the National Academy of Sports Medicine with corrective exercise, I became that strength coach where, okay, this guy's got a sprained ankle. He can't participate with the team right now on the field or in the weight room. So, hey, let's give him to Miller.
Yeah.
So then I was also that guy, in the health club, right? Someone's got low back issues. Someone has a shoulder issue. It's like, okay, you need to go to Ken. All right. So basically harvesting, those collective experiences, both working with general population and high level athletes, gave me an opportunity to work at the professional level with some few select players, baseball, basketball, and football. Right. But as far as all that goes, that's where when we talk about recovery, regeneration, that's when I've been able to take my experience and apply that to basically what I do here at my facility here in Alameda, California. So that's about that as far as who I am and what I do. But as far as what I do with the National Academy of Sports Medicine, I'm one of the regional master instructors along with Marty Miller and of course Wendy Batts, and we're just there to help foster and develop other instructors that teach the OPT model, right? So that's about it for my experience. So 25 plus years of experience that I'm just trying to share with whoever I can share it with, whether it's within NASM or other things that I do from an education standpoint.
That's awesome, man. You did a great job keeping that under 20 seconds. I appreciate it.
My watch is off.
You got to start setting timers. So with what you do as one of the regional master instructors for NASM, from what I know, a big part of what you'll do has to do, or maybe just you specifically, has a lot to do with the development of the master trainers and the people who are going through this course. Now, I get questions quite a bit. I answer them to the best of my ability, but this is your wheelhouse. So I do want to kind of use you while you're here to talk about it.
Yeah.
What is that? When people ask me these questions, this is the questions I'm going to ask you. What is it? What am I going to learn? And what is it going to be able to do for me?
Okay, so what is it? It's basically that next evolution as far as your experience with the National Academy of Sports Medicine. So what we do is we look for, so for those personal trainers that are NASM CPT and they've gone through at least 2 specializations, and the specializations that we hone in on are the corrective exercise specialist and the performance enhancement specialist. So, and if you'll remember early on with the OPT model, Rick, that it had 7 phases. That's right. Versus the 5 that we have now that we expanded into, the CES. And then of course with the PES, we add that second phase of power development. So basically to go back to where someone has a full working knowledge, practical experience, having at least 2 years as a personal trainer, strength coach, somebody that works with other human beings and getting them to move better, perform better. And then they can actually put their knowledge and experience to the test. So now that as they fulfill the qualifications, right, at least 2 specializations, current CPT, they go through an online course, right, which is then audited by myself and other instructors for the program. So again,
can you talk us through what those courses or modules, what is in that? What are they learning from that?
So what we're trying to measure there is their understanding of the OPT model, right? Do they understand the acute variables and what it does to affect the adaptations for stabilization, strength, and the power? So having a functional, just an academic, let's just say, background on the model, right? Do they know how it works, the progressions, how you modify exercise selection, acute variables, and how those things work to influence the body, right? But also things like, why do we do the superset on phase 2, and why do we do the superset in phase 5 versus the other phases, right? And then they have to submit a video, and the video just, it's another screening process to see Okay, can they put into practice? Can they demonstrate what it is that they've done on paper? Because a lot of people, when they take tests, when they study for the NASM CPT, they're great with book smarts, but the actual application, do they know when it's a 3-2-1 or a 4-2-2 or a 2-2-2 tempo? I know I'm throwing some numbers out here, but when we're talking about speed and tempo and how that influences, okay, how are we supposed to achieve stabilization? Well, we want to move slow with emphasis in the eccentric loading of that movement, right? And then power, as fast as possible. So we want to know that you can identify, right, what speed looks like, and you can modify and cue somebody into the positions with the speed and tempo that they're meant to do. So you have the written part for as far as the modules go. Then they have to submit a video, and that's when we say, okay, hey, the kinetic chain checkpoints are a little out of line. Some things you want to consider. If it's passable, then they go to the live section of the work of the course, and this is where, okay, we say, okay, Rick, show me a phase 1 exercise for balance, right? So now we just throw it out at you. It's not scripted. You can't choreograph it because we just kind of take the grab back. Okay, here, Rick, this is what you're going to do, right? And then they have to show that they understand. They can think on their feet, and they have that level of comprehension on the information as it's delivered through the OPT model. So the Master Trainer Summit, once they've gone through us and they're passable, right? They've shown competency to demonstrate and apply the OPT model. There's doors that have been opened. So as far as the opportunities that it affords you, one, NASM is always looking for subject matter experts. So we've got owners and operators that have their own facilities. We have trainers that work more on the medical side, right? So more of the corrective exercise, or they work alongside physical therapists. And we have those that have baseball emphasis. We have one that's, working with boxers, right? So then, it'll open those doors for you. And I've heard of other trainers getting job opportunities in management experience, with management experience, based on their credential. Because we're in a world of like specialization, master that, you need that extra level of distinction that shows, okay, not only do I master like this type of equipment or this format of training, but now you can show that, you understand how the OPT model works. And you and I both know that if you understand the OPT model, you can work with any body, right? Any relatively healthy individual. And if they're not relatively healthy, then you know what to do with the information that you need from, say someone coming from a referral from a physical therapist or a chiropractor. Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into it. And I've seen trainers that really took advantage of it and, started their own businesses and started their own training systems and opened up their own gyms. So it's great to see these guys that have come through the Master Trainer Summit and what they've been doing with it.
Yeah. One of the things that I found probably the most interesting, we go back to the testing and the live testing that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. I love it. I think it's a great idea. It's good to meet people and know who they are and see them and meet them and greet them face to face and listen to what they know. And what's interesting is that I found that the majority of people that ended up not passing that live portion didn't pass it because of almost just one thing, trying to do something too sexy, too like, let me show you how much I know, as opposed to showing what we're asking them to do, right? So we ask you specifically a thing about the model, and when they start throwing in burpees or drop jumps that are outside of that particular phase of the model, they're trying to show that they're fun and lively maybe, but they also in that show that they don't know about the model and what phase and what progressions that we're looking at. And that's what I found. Not so much that people can't identify 5 kinetic chain checkpoints, or people don't understand an overhead squat or a single leg squat assessment or pushing and pulling programming. They really just try to show that they know more than they do, and it ends up showing that they don't know the model itself.
Right. exactly. And that's, I mean, and you've been a part of those, of a number of those master trainer summits. And, one of the first things we tell them is, you know, don't try to impress us with,
Yeah.
with, trying to be dynamic and, everything that you've done, like you said, burpees, and someone's doing like kettlebell swings in the stabilization program. And we're like, okay, well, it does have its place, but, we just want to know that you can demonstrate this phase of training. Don't, I just want the burger. Forget about all the other stuff that goes on it, right?
Yeah.
Just give me what I want. And then, yeah, they actually talk themselves out of passing more than anything else. But then once you dive deeper in, it's like, yeah, you know what you know, right? And you actually have a working knowledge of the OPT model, but don't try and impress, Rick, me, Wendy, Mark, it's like, can you have somebody do an overhead squat, and can you perform a workout based on your observations? That's it.
Don't you think that's it? Most people seem like they try to make their money on the condiments, and nobody knows how to make the burger.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Yeah,
they just,
it's rare.
They go on and they say, "Hey, this sauce, try this sauce and this, this, and then we're going, "Hey, but what is it going on? What's the meat of your program?" And everybody, and this is not people necessarily going through the course. It is the fitness industry. The fitness industry in general, not as a whole, as a generalization, are really trying to become professionals at condiments and not professionals at the meat of what programming is.
Right. Exactly. And to that point, Rick, there are some things that we're working on, some initiatives that we're trying to, help improve that. So by the time that somebody does get to that point where they have a live person in front of them, they can actually do that. They can give them what they need, right? But if someone wants to lose fat, whatever the goal is that they want to achieve, they can give the client what they want, but slide in there the things that they need using the model. So yeah, and I'll just talk about hamburgers.
My parents used to do that and during the holidays all the time.
Yeah.
They would give me a box from years before, and it would be a toy, and I'd open it up, and it was not a toy. It would be socks or a church tie or something, and I was
exactly.
This is the worst Christmas ever.
Oh no, I see now it makes sense because that's what happened to me. I think it happens to everybody. But then now that as I'm a parent, it's like, when someone asks what do they need, it's like, yeah, they need socks, they need shoes, give them a pair of pants if you can. But that's us providing the kids what they need. They want what they want, but you have to give them the things that they need to move better, feel better.
In like an Iron Man box, because it'll lead to incredible disappointment.
the ultimate deception.
Exactly. I'm going to give him a Decepticon toy, and it's just going to be socks inside of it. It's going to be the box.
Gotcha.
I know. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that you are also a licensed massage therapist. Is that true? Or did I make
back in the?
Oh,
no, you did not make.
All right.
Well, it goes back to after I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona, I moved to Las Vegas. And working out there, I was working as a lifeguard, schlepping chairs and tables and all that stuff. But the person who ran the pool also ran the spa. And he goes, "Hey, you know what? You ever think about becoming a massage therapist?" And I was just kind of hanging out. And I was like, you know what? I have this interest in the body, being able to work with people from a manual standpoint became, one of those things that I'll say, hey, it's a great idea. It complements what I already know. So back in 1993, I went and got my massage license out of, and that was they had a 680-hour course. So well ahead of its time when nationally you only needed like a couple hundred. Couple 100-hour course to take the national exam. But back then, because, there's things that they're trying to mitigate, being in Las Vegas, they really wanted to have a high standard for somebody being able to, for things that we won't talk about. But, just being able to use that experience and use that background to use the corrective exercise information that we've learned through the OPT model And and I've just been able to use body work techniques over the years, but especially since the OPT model came around, actually how to use it from a systemic or a systematic standpoint on how to get somebody to move better. So I've been blessed to be able to work, have direct experience with Mike Clark, but also close contacts we have with Wendy Batts and Tony Ambler Wright, and how that, because they have their massage licenses as well. So, picking up techniques on how to facilitate movement is, and that's been a great complement to using the OPT model.
Yeah, that for me, I did go back to school also for massage therapy, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to be like, look, I can tell you what to foam roll. I can direct you to a roller and a cane and a back knobber and all of these different things. Right. But one of our friends formerly at NASM, and I consider one of my biggest mentors leading into the work that I did with NASM, was Eric Beard. And he was a massage therapist. And not only was he a massage therapist, he is probably by far one of the best presenters and speakers I've ever heard in my life. I bow down to him and his knowledge base and his abilities. But he was also a massage therapist, and he said, just remember this: nothing beats a good pair of hands. And and I thought I need to go back and do that. So I did. I went back and I got my license in massage therapy as well. That was in 2010, and that was after my program that I did at Cal and for the Masters, and I just wanted something else. And now we see, and it's a lot because of people like you and our friend Scott Mitchell, who used to be with us. And everything was about what is regen, what is recovery, what is the foam rolling, how can we get people to feel and function better, and not necessarily. We already were familiar with the exercises, right? We knew the OPT model. We felt comfortable with the exercises. We wanted to know more about how do we get people to feel better through means of regeneration and recovery. And then fast forward to me opening a recovery facility in New York City in 2018. So
awesome place.
Thank you. Yes, you've been there and taken advantage of it too. But I want to talk to you about you and what you started doing and how you've been kind of navigating this during COVID-19, and what are you able to do with your clients, and how has that changed since this has happened, what you were doing before and what you're doing now with recovery and regeneration?
I'll say that the first formal environment that I was able to apply corrective exercise recovery, although, back in 2010, we weren't calling it recovery regeneration, right? It's just reconditioning or return to play is kind of the phrase that has been tossed around from that standpoint. So when it comes to, working with those athletes at the collegiate environment, I was a great opportunity for me, because not only did I have my sports, but I was an assistant towards 4 other sports, big one being football, right? So with softball, gymnastics, and golf, I ran their programming. So when I came on board, it was, each one got assessed. Each one did an overhead squat, heels elevated, single leg squat. They all had their individual programming, which they would do every day, right? So in an hour-based workout, they would do 5 to 10 minutes of their own individual workout plan, their own self-care plan. Yeah. Right. That was also a plan or a variation they would do when they were traveling, when they were on the road. So if they got off of a long flight, if, after a game, they needed, they were feeling a little tight, they knew how to take care of themselves. So if there was tension in the neck, tension in the hips, or tension in the low back, what did they have available to them to take care of themselves while I'm not with them? So occasionally I'd travel with my teams. If I had the time off and if the team had the budget, I would travel with them, and I would run some light workouts. So unloading them. So if it was softball, If it was close enough, I would actually go out there and spend some time with them, getting them to recover and regenerate on their own, especially if you're talking about a 3-day stint. Now, from injury standpoint, two different things, right? So getting somebody coming back from an injury. So we had one of our running backs, he had a shoulder issue during season. So it's like, okay, well, he can't bench, all the traditional, he can't clean. So what can we do? So they'd send him off to me. So what would I do? I'd assess him. Wouldn't work, I'd work alongside with the physical therapist on what their treatment plan was, but I would take that time to work on the deficits he was showing for the rest of his body. So, of course, if it's a big, hips being a big thing you need when you're running, looked at hip extension, hip internal external rotation. There were enough deficits there that we can focus on that while he's out of commission. Work on ankle mobility, hip mobility, and at the same time, I would do a phase. So he was good enough to do a phase 2. So getting him to bench and then immediately followed up with a ball push-up. And needless to say, you get through that first set of that superset of strength and stability, he was done. I'm taking 45-pound plates off, to where he was down to 135 pounds from starting off the first set at 285. Right. But those are the things that, when you talk about recovery, reconditioning, just building up that ability to stabilize and control your body before you get back into the traditional power and strength that most sports are built around. So putting it all together has just been accumulation of high exposure, high opportunity to work with different sports, different issues, working with swimmers, working with baseball, which I've been doing more so these last few years, more than anything else. And you just have to, you have to listen to the athlete, because, one of the things that I found is that the athlete becomes the injury. And the athlete becomes injury, and that's the opposite of the case. The athlete is still the athlete, but the injury just happens to be a part of who they are today. So I know I've kind of flipped the switch on you a little bit to talk about, return to play, but when it comes to recovery, regeneration, to right along that, now working with, I just had a training session this morning, client did an all-nighter. So I'm like, dude, we're done. We're not working out, because you're going to get so much more from sleep than you are from anything more than we can do together. So when we talk about recovery and regenerate, you got to look at the total package. So you had that webinar the other week about the importance of sleep and hydration and sleep hygiene. And the number one thing is, can you sleep? Because the sleep's going to affect how you perform the next day, actually 2 days, right, when you're sleep deprived. So getting sleep under control, and then looking at the exercise, the movement component, getting blood flow, reoxygenating the blood, breathing techniques, and kind of wrapping that into, going beyond the OPT model and, working on stability, strength, and power. But even under the corrective exercise standpoint, there's a lot of things that we can incorporate, like what we mentioned about, just breathing techniques, being more mindful, incorporating some meditation. So just so you know, Rick, this is stuff that I was not saying 5 years ago.
You're right.
And 10 years ago, right? So when you talk about recovery, regeneration, it's, understanding that even reading a magazine that you enjoy, or sitting down and reading a book that you can catch up on, getting that mind to relax so that the body can relax, so that when you're now time to put demand on it, it can be more responsive, because it has had some time to, recuperate, regenerate from all that stress that you put into it. You got to find some way to take it out. So a lot of times, now it's about, okay, how can we fit this into 10-minute, 5-minute modules throughout the day? Or is it about that 1 hour or half-hour program that you're going to do 3 times a week? So when we, that's a big question, it's like about recovery generation, because it's individualized, and you're going to have to look at your constraints of time, the equipment that you have available, and the environment that you're going to be in. Because now, as we start opening up, people are starting to travel more. They're starting their commutes. people are going to start getting on planes. So that aspect of how they recover from the stresses of travel or sitting behind the desk or, anything that you're going to do, throughout the day a lot. How do you take that stress out and get the body what it needs to, recover, get that recovery process so that when you come back up again and you want to reintroduce stress, whether it's work or exercise, right, you're going to be stronger for it.
Yeah, I think
and that's the bigger picture.
We look at things like the nervous system and how the nervous system actually affects the endocrine system and how it affects our regulation of inflammation and how we respond to pain and this biopsychosocial component to pain. And as a matter of fact, my physical therapist that I use here in New York City, his name's Pete Schultz out of Dynamic Sports Physical Therapy. What they've started doing is they've got some kind of like self-guided meditation, and they put little sensors on you to measure that you have you've decreased your sympathetic nervous system, that your parasympathetic response is much better. He said in some cases we've stopped, at the last 10 minutes or so, a lot of times PTs will do icing. He said, we actually transition a lot of people out of the icing. Don't worry about the ice. Down-regulate your nervous system. And then they quantify it. And that's the kind of stuff I love, right? They'll show your heart rate drop down. There are so many different variables that they can measure. And we kind of like these quantifiable things. We like tools and toys for things like that that can measure it. But I think it's a nice addition, and it's something, that's kind of stuff we use at Recover, but different technology. Do you see that kind of taking space in the fitness industry beyond what we see in yoga or maybe some other practices that we have quantifiables in actual gyms and facilities?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, the only problem with that, I mean, we're coming out with tools. I mean, you got the Whoop. You've got, I've got a sleep app, there's the Aura, the Ring, things that look at quality of sleep. Now, the question that follows, and it's the bigger question, is what are you going to do with all that information? Right, we can come out with all the diagnostics and assessment tools, but the question is what are you going to do with it? Like I had one of the trainers that works out of here, she got one of those bands and she saw, it's like, well, I guess I wasn't sleeping as much as I thought I was. Right. Because, to get 8 hours of sleep, you actually need to be in bed really about 9.5 hours in some cases. Right. Mm-hmm. So my question to her is, well, what are you going to do with that information? All right. Are you going to turn off the TV earlier? Are you going to, stop cruising social media the last thing you do before you go to bed? Are you going to blacken out your windows so that, the ambient light doesn't come through? Are you going to, all those things? So with all the diagnostics that can come out there, whether it's in the gym or something that you do at home or, because you just have that band on you now and it looks at how much you're moving, how many steps you're taking, what your heart rate is, what's your HRV, right? And all of that stuff. But the question is, are we creating an environment? Are we adjusting our lifestyle to address the information that we're gathering? So, every time I open a book or read something about the industry, like club industry, it's like, okay, well, this is coming up. Well, how can we as personal trainers or strength coaches use that? Right? Or how empowered are we now to use that information to make a change in somebody's life? And that's where, I try to take more of a practical side of things because, I know you get it a lot and we get it a lot as far as, hey, I saw this cool thing, should I buy it? All right, well, it's a $200 investment. What do you want to get out of that? Right? How are you going to use it? How are you going to apply it? So, the biggest thing is if you're going to start researching stuff, like that tool that you mentioned that from your physical therapist, that's awesome. How do you respond or where is it now? And okay, so Richey, what are you going to do about that? Because you're not going to hook yourself up to that thing every day or every week, but what kind of daily adjustments are you going to make to accommodate that information? But if there was one thing that I see a lot out there, it's more the sleep assessment tools. Yeah. That's one of the biggest things that has been coming out now for the last couple of years, talking about the quality of sleep. So Why We Sleep, you mentioned that book. That was a big eye opener. I was like, turn off the TV at 7:00 and then, make my life adjustments there. But
I've
sleep,
done the
yeah.
sleep scheduling thing probably the best, where I may not get my hours of sleep, but my schedule is spot on. I mean, without an alarm, doesn't matter, 6:30 every day, doesn't matter, my eyes crack open. I don't know if it'll be like that in winter when the lights change. And,
when it's like dark all day long.
Birds chirping here. It's like I'm in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs when I wake up in the
morning. That's right. Bluebirds coming in, help you change your clothes.
Exactly. Hey, let me ask you one more question, but before we do, I'm going to put this out to the listeners that are live. If you have questions about recovery, regeneration, return to play, tools, handheld massage devices, anything like that, if you've got questions about them, go ahead and enter in your information, like whatever question it is. Our producer Greg will receive that information and is going to provide it back out to Ken. So Ken, what are some of the ways, just when you talk to your clients and you ask the question, what are you going to do with that information? That's valuable. But do you provide any guidance between what to do with that information? Are you asking them, are you giving guidance and saying, now that you have this, here are steps, are they doable? Are they accomplishable? Because a lot of people, they dream big, and the dreams are big to take granular steps to get to where they're going. So do you put out some of those small steps that they need to get to before they can get to that big goal?
Definitely. And this is where success is determined by, managing expectations, right? So if they want to shoot for the stars and they hit the moon, they're still in a better spot than where they are today.
That's right.
So I want to lose 40 pounds. I want to, I've got low back pain, whatever the issue may be. And, so what you have to investigate, out of the 168 hours out of the week, how are they spending, a third of that time where they're sleeping, right? And then the other 2/3 of the time when they're awake, right? So how are they managing their time? What are their obligations, right? Are they a business owner like you? I mean, you've got how many, brick and mortar sites, and then what you do for NASM, right?
I'll let you know how many I have after COVID.
I know. So I'm broadcasting from here in this facility while I have it. With no end in sight on when I can reopen. But that's another podcast altogether.
That is
so with their job, with family, with social, with all these other things that they have in their life, how are they going to fit this in? And so with some people, let's say, unfortunately, it's like, the kids are going to be with their mom over the weekend. So I have, every other weekend and Wednesdays by myself. So some people it might be, that's when you're going to do your program. We as much as we'd like this to be a daily implemented program, well, maybe 3 bulk sessions a week is how we're going to implement it, right? So, or some people say, hey, that transition between when I get off work and when I have to pick up the kids, or before I have to catch this train back home, these are some of the things, this is the pocket of time that they have. So definitely they're going to, if they knew the strategies, you'd hope that they'd be able to implement, but helping them figure out on their own, that way they own the solution. I didn't hand them the solution. They own it. Right. So they're going to want to, just like when you have kids, it's your baby. Right. And you're responsible for your baby. So you want as many brain babies as they can have, of their own, because they'll coddle it. They'll, and it's just for me to help say, hey, that's a great idea. But, is there going to be this glitch, or what are some of the foreseeable speed bumps that are going to prevent you from executing? So however good or bad their solutions are, whatever they can come up with, it's up to me now. My responsibility, this is what they pay me for, is to help them, figure out and tweak and adjust to make it fit into their lifestyle. So when it comes to recovery, and again, recovery regeneration, that's a new concept in the fitness industry, relatively speaking, right? As much as effort has gone into the last 3-4 decades into how to exercise. It's just come up lately on how to recover from exercise, right? Or stress-induced, exercise-induced stress or work-induced stress.
I also think there's something valuable there too, which is the fact that how you exercise can be recovery. It can be regeneration. And some people think it's just foam rolling 100%. Or stretching, or massage guns, but there are exercises that you do that actually benefit your ability to recover.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Exactly. So that self-care plan, even things like yoga, right? Yoga with the mindfulness aspect of yoga, it's static pose holding, and depending on the instructor and the intent of that yoga session, because yoga can be pretty vigorous and
challenging.
Intense, right? And then it can be super relaxing. It's like, oh man, that is exactly what I needed, right? So like you said, movement of different types is going to help facilitate the recovery regeneration process. Nice hair.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's get to Greg and see if Greg's got any questions that have come through on our Facebook Live, and we'll pepper you with a few things.
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. We did have a few questions in the chat. Khalil Shakil wants to know, or as a question, it says, trying to get high school coaches to buy into the importance of recovery is difficult. Do you guys have any advice on how to do that?
My brother is a high school wrestling coach, and talking to him about recovery regeneration, when he goes, he's telling me his startup routine. It's okay, we're going to work on this, we're going to work on that. It's all dumbbell work, strength work. But for him to absorb and apply the idea of, okay, how important flexibility is, having adequate and appropriate range of motion is, and then how to implement that into your team training is the biggest. So it's not, my experience with coaches, it's not that they're opposed to it. They just don't know how to use it from a team standpoint. But the other side of that coin is they don't know, with strength and power, let's say, he's that boxer that we talked about earlier, master trainer. So he, it's an explosive, powerful. You have to have good endurance. I mean, it's basically all bundled into one. So when the emphasis winds up being power and strength, it's talking about how you implement the strategies. So can that be something that you do as part of the pre-warm-up? Is it part of the cool down? You're not going to box every day, so what are you going to do on your off days? So helping coaches find strategies is one thing, right? How are you going to fit it in, right? But then that leads into the second conversation that you have to have with coaches is, what's your yearly program? What's your yearly plan look like? So if season starts here, what are you doing over here to set them up, right? To build up towards the strength and the power that they need in the season. But then how do you unload them post-season? And then how are you going to pepper that in there or sprinkle that in there throughout the season to help maintain it? So a lot of times they're not resisted because they don't like it. They just don't know how to do it, right? So those are the things that you need to kind of share with them. So don't put something out there unless you know how to address it.
Yeah, I think one other thing that goes along with strategy is that you have to put forth the effort to make it work. And if high school coaches already have their plans set out, it's really difficult to get them to start implementing something new. And that's why, to be honest, it's taken so many years, especially for traditional sports, to start implementing more progressive training styles. It's because, my coach did this with us and we went to state. Okay, all right, fine. But now we've got research that comes out that supports different types of training, the benefits that come from recovery and regeneration. We see certain implementations showing decrease in injury potential and resistance and resilience with injury. There's so many things out there. And when we look at it and we just have everybody do the same program you've been doing for the last 25 years, it is a disservice. It is a disservice to your student athletes. So take time, put forth the effort to learn what's new, what's coming out, what the research says, because your job as a coach isn't just to take what you learned from your coach 20 years ago when you were doing it and say, we were good, so let me do that with my people. You have to put forth the effort to look, study, and address things that need to be changed. If that's going to take time, if it's going to take effort, if it's going to be difficult, so be it. But that's what progress looks like. Protect your students, get the best out of everybody, and try to stay current with what's going on in the research.
Right. Exactly. Right. And one thing to add on to that is that when working with athletes, so if you're talking about high school, junior high coaches, we have to remember that these guys are only going to be athletes for so long at that level, right? So implementing strategies for recovery and exercise, we have to build the framework and the foundation for what they're going to have to consider for the rest of their lives. Yeah. So if we don't talk about recovery, regeneration, flexibility, and the importance of stability now, it's for darn sure they're not going to do it later on, because there's been plenty of 65, 55-year-olds that I've worked with that have been working out all their lives. But flexibility, the first time they got exposed to it is through me, right? And I didn't get to them till later in life, right? So that's the other thing that it's really important for coaches to understand this as well.
Yeah. All right, Greg, what else you got, sir?
Yeah, James wants to know what are some of your best and favorite recovery methods, whether it's with tools or things like ice baths, saunas, etc.
We did a roundtable on this not too long ago, but recovery tools like the Hyperice, Hypervolt, Hypersphere. So when we're talking about percussion and vibration, those have been a game changer, to say the least, when it comes to performance. So, if you talk about these high profile athletes, and if they're carrying it in their bag and they operate at the highest level physically, why shouldn't somebody who works at a desk and behind the computer be able to feel the same level of relief that they do, right? So when it talks about recovery tools, yes, ice baths, I've done it and I feel a ton better. I've gone to Rick's place and done the infrared sauna and I've taken my naps there, right? But when you talk about the ability to have an affordable piece of equipment like the Hypersphere or the Hypervolt, to where now I can use those tools on me, and if I've got neck tension at 5 o'clock because I've been behind the computer all day long, and 3 or 4 minutes there, do some mobility techniques while I'm doing it. Right, it feels like the day didn't happen to me, and that's one of those things where Rick, having the Normatec compression boots and taking that nap and then going through the infrared sauna, it erased the 3 previous days of travel that I had done. So by the time when I went to your facility, I had done 3 days in Chicago, sleeping in hotels, erratic schedule. I was wrecked when I got to New York and got to recover. I felt better. I felt a ton better. And that was after using compression, getting in that infrared sauna. It erased the previous 3 days. And those are events. I'm not going to do that every day because I don't have access to it. But to talk about daily strategies, using the Hyperice product line has been a game changer, because I can get somebody involved with the right product to incorporate their strategy. Right. And this is something that they own. If they are hip to the idea, I've empowered them. I've given them the tools to actually do it. Right. It doesn't take long for them to feel the difference.
Nice. Yeah. I like it. I'm a big fan of their products as well. And just the folks there as a company, they're good people. So shout out Hyperice. Awesome. And congrats on their recent acquisition of Normatec. That was a big play in the space. And I'm looking forward to see what else is coming out with those guys. Hey, Greg, do you have any other questions as we start to taper off to the very end here?
Yeah, this one's from me, and since I'm the producer, I can do that. I was actually interested a little bit in the sleep, the sleep monitoring that you were talking about, and how exactly. I've used devices like that, but how exactly do you best use the data that comes from those to implement recovery strategies?
Good question.
Okay, that's a great question, because it's one that comes up quite a bit. You can have the wearables, right? There's ones that you put under your mattress, and basically what it's looking for is monitoring how long you sleep, but also the depth of sleep. So when we talk about, getting into that REM cycle, and again, that book, Why We Sleep, really goes into great depth on that. But, getting to your question, looking at, okay, what's the environment like, right? So if for one, if your duration isn't that long, I go, why isn't it that long? And if we can't identify the depth of sleep, we want to look at, okay, well, what are we doing to help you do that? Is it because of alcohol consumption? Is it because you're eating late at night? The types of food that affects the sleep. So those are all the things that we're looking at as far as, the quality of sleep. Are you getting into was it 3 or 4 REM cycles during a night's sleep? But when we look at how long you sleep, where I have a lot of clients that when I see them, they've had 3 hours of sleep that night prior, right? So we can't operate well, especially if you're in a decision-making position, and then that just leads to other things like, how's your blood pressure? How are your blood profiles as a reflection of the quality of sleep that you're doing? So looking at things, again, environment. Is it dark in your room? Are you cool, right? Did you turn off the TV? Did you shut down your computer? Just things like, are you meditating? Are you doing some things to calm yourself down to now when you reassess after you implement these strategies, is there a change in the length of sleep and the amount of times you can get into that REM into that REM cycle? So if you go from one time into that REM cycle, then that's no good, right? So next question is, what do we need to do to get to 2 of those dips and then 3 of those dips, right? So looking at, for one, environment, the amount of time, are you adjusting your schedule, looking at blue light and exposure and all of that stuff. So, as you know, Rick, there's a lot that goes into it, but looking at the easy stuff, controlling the environment, managing your schedule, whether it's putting the kids earlier to bed or, your calorie consumption is going to be a big part too, right? Because not too long ago, I had a little too much libation, too late in the evening, and I felt it. I had the worst sleep I've had in a couple of years because that's not a habit that I usually incorporate. But it was a celebration and worth doing. But I suffered for it the next 2 days, right? So those are the things that you have to look at when it comes to sleep, and how you monitor and what you monitor.
Sorry, but I think you also have to look at it over time. And,
exactly.
You can have a bad experience with sleep, but that not have really been an issue. It's just kind of a situation that you didn't sleep well. So we look at everything as an N of one, right? Like you are an individual. Yeah. And for some people, sleeping cold or sleeping warmer, like they sleep better. For some people that that sleep with they watch TV to get them to calm down at the end of the night so they can sleep, versus people need to turn it off. But it has to be seen over time. So you can't just say, hey, remember that one time I did this and this is what works best. It worked best at that time. It was a moment, and there are blips like that happen. So we have to look at patterns. We have to seek out patterns. Right. And if anybody's listening to this and you have some real issues and real problems sleeping, don't come to a personal trainer for it.
No.
There are counselors that work, sleep psychologists. There are professionals that work and focus primarily on sleep. And I would suggest that you turn your focus and direction to that, because ideally we're going to be spending about 1/3 of our entire life sleeping. And if you're not doing it well, then I suggest that you see somebody professionally.
Yeah. And you can kind of look at the guidance on sleep as like personal training guidance for sleep is the same as personal training guidance for nutrition. We can give you general tools and recommendations, but if I need to tell you how many calories you need to go to somebody else.
That's right.
Right. So, and from a personal training standpoint, the way I look at sleep and the way I've looked at sleep for years is like, if you haven't slept, I'm canceling our appointment. Or if you've had moderate sleep, instead of this power phase or a strength phase of workout, we might just be doing stability and mobility work that day, because I don't want to give you anything too complex. I don't want to give you anything too intense to where if something just take that one synapse to not fire. Right. And somebody goes, ooh, Okay.
What was that?
That one got me. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's how I would use it from a practical standpoint. So my pre-workout interview, what did you eat? When did you eat it? When's the last glass of water, cup of water that you had? And how did you sleep last night? Right. So sleep has definitely become one of those pre-workout interviews. Right. Yeah. So when they're foam rolling, I do the interview, and that I can have what I want on paper to do that day, but all that can be blown out of the water if they haven't slept or eaten well before the workout.
Nice. Hey, Ken, thank you so much for your insights, for being a part of this. Can you just let people know if they want to reach out and connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Couple ways. One, if you email me at ken.miller, and I know I don't look like a Miller, but ken.miller@nasm.org. ken.miller@nasm.org, or if you want to direct message me through my Instagram handle, that is at KJFitLab, Kenneth Jeffrey FitLab and that's for Instagram, KJFitLab. That's how you can get a hold of me there as well.
Excellent. Listen, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
As a friend, as a colleague, and then, of course, your insights for being on here. Thank you for everybody for listening. My name is Richey. This is the NASM CPT Podcast.